Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at the Transit Executive Committee meeting. I'm going to have ask for a roll call. Thank you. I need a declaration of pecuniary interest. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest? I guess none. I need a motion to adopt the minutes of transit meeting for February 7th. Councillor Brenner and Commissioner Watton. Any questions? All in favor? I need a motion to amend the agenda to move delegations forward. Thank you. Chair Henry and Councillor Watton, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. So we're going to start with our first delegation. Is it Ms. Vanderwagen? Joelle, thank you. We were both all up here debating how to say your first name, so I know. Thank you.
I'm so grateful that, there are citizens who take on this really big burden of running our wonderful region. I'm going to set my stop. Okay. I'm just saying thank you for your work. I'm setting my stopwatch. Sorry. Never mind. I may need a little more than 5 minutes this is a fairly comprehensive. I'm talking about the whole transit system. It's not just one issue. So you might want to give me a little bit of extra from the 5 minutes. But anyway, let's begin. Okay, my background. Without providing a lengthy CV, I would mention that in 1992, I served on the Provincial Advisory Committee for the first transit supportive guidelines. Based on our original research, a colleague and I developed the criteria for pedestrian planning principles in that document, particularly related to street patterns and walking distances. I encourage all councillors to obtain a copy of the updated transit supportive guidelines. You can get it from the provincial bookstore or download it online. In your shoes, I would feel overwhelmed dealing with all of the policy documents from the provincial level, the regional level, the local levels. The transit supportive guidelines are a simple cookbook for implementing those policies on the ground. And I think you'd find it very helpful. Anyway, now I'm going to start to talk about our transit system as a whole in Durham. When I moved to Oshawa in 2016, I was forced to buy my first car because of a lack of a grid of bus routes, comprehensive bus routes in Durham. In Toronto, one didn't have to use a complicated app to know how to get around. There was direct service on all the east-west, north-south arterials with easy transfers. You walk out the door and you say, oh, I want to go there. Oh yeah, I know there'll be service on that route. So you could rely on the system to get you anywhere in Metro Toronto. Now, Durham is also blessed with a good arterial grid. And while there's continuous service east-west on, Highway 2, King, Dundas, and north-south on Simcoe, that's about it. I mean, I'm not familiar with all the other ends, but for the most part, there's a tangle of special purpose routes that require phone support or special apps to make sense of them. Now, on other arterials that are on our bus service, it'll go part way and then redirect. On Wilson Road, there's bus service coming from the north, but when it gets to Adelaide, it turns west and goes to the transit mall at the Oshawa Mall. So the lower part of Wilson has no service. The same is the case with the Bailey, Victoria, Bloor-Bailey-Victoria corridor, which is the major east-west arterial in the south of Durham. The major. Crosses through Oshawa, Whitby, Ajax, Pickering, yet there is no continuous service on that arterial. And that denies direct crosstown access to the Oshawa GO and Vail rail stations, which are located on Bloor. Now, I guess I could skip some examples to keep my time really short, but some of these I think are important. Okay, at one time, here's the human examples. My husband lived at Bloor Street East near Ritson while he was working in Bailey and Pickering. However, because there was no direct bus service, he had to have a car to get to work. He couldn't just ride the bus and read a book. In his same building on Bloor, there was a man who worked at the Loblaw Food Terminal in Ajax, which is located close to Victoria Street. But because there was no continuous service, he had to have a friend give him a ride to work. So this is unacceptable. And with respect to Bloor Bailey in particular, I've spoken to DRT at their public information, events to no avail. I've been doing it for years. There's still no service on Bloor. Okay, that's one issue. Now, there is a need, obviously, for continuous bus service on most of the major arterials at no more than about half-hour intervals with clock face timing. Clock face timing means there's a predictable departure time for each stop, such as quarter past the hour, quarter to the hour, and you just know. So this kind of legibility of the system and confidence in its predictability is crucial to attracting and retaining riders. Now, let's get on the subject of drivers. Apparently, there's a shortage of drivers for Durham buses, which affects the ability to provide better service levels. A friend of mine was moving to Kendallwood Road, south part of Whitby, and I called DRT service to check out her bus routes. And I learned that there's a 409 bus that goes up Kendallwood north. She could catch that. But there was no two-way service. To get back home, she would have had to go all the way up to Taunton, where the bus loops back down to the Oshawa Center.
If I can just, Okay, you have a motion. Sorry, you have a motion to extend. Go
Thank
ahead. Without me even saying a word. For a time.
Thank you.
2 minutes. You have 2 additional minutes.
Just 2?
I know,
Well,
it goes fast.
You'll see.
It goes
You
fast.
might be interested, okay?
Can I have all in favor? Thank you.
Okay. I just think some of these examples are important, because you hear so much theory. Anyway, I called customer service. I was shocked when I found out. And at the time, customer service, there was a lack of drivers. That's why they weren't providing two-way service on that route. There were buses standing idle and unused because they couldn't recruit enough drivers. Well, how is that problem going to be addressed? Now, it seems to me there's always money for capital projects, but not much for operating costs. Operating costs are not very sexy. So now there are transit priority projects on Highway 2, east-west, and on Simcoe, and for a bit faster service that may attract new riders. But what about the rest of the system? You need the whole grid of connecting routes to feed those express services. So we need to bite the bullet and prioritize service. Whether training more drivers, paying enough wages, we can't do it piecemeal. So we need strategies for change. Durham is a spread out, low-density region, which has resulted in higher operating subsidies, and so be it in the short term. But there could be a major shift toward transit use if the following approach were taken. Put the full grid in place. Yeah, it's going to cost pretty high subsidies, but we need once that's in place, a major public education campaign, and then make the first month of service free. And, that would be so dramatic. I think it would just encourage people in mass to try transit. Now, first is put money into service rather than transit capital projects for the time being. Secondly, tap into the federal government's climate change initiatives. One of the most important ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is to reduce car use and car dependence. Raising gas prices doesn't do much good other than make people mad unless there is an easy alternative to driving. Hence, the development of, let me finish the sentence. Transit-oriented walkable communities is one of the first priorities for climate change strategies. Now, I wanted to say a little bit about the importance of the Oshawa Transit Mall.
Maybe somebody could ask you a question about that. Is there any questions for this delegation? Councillor Brunner.
Thank There, it's back on. To the delegation, the question that I was going to ask you was that during your presentation, you talked about the express buses, and then you talked about the need to have an emphasis on the transit that gets you to the express buses. Am I correct?
Yeah, the full grid, so everybody can have access in all directions.
So am I correct in understanding that, are you asking or suggesting that the current level of service which has been implemented can get you in and out of community, or get you out of municipalities, but not around or within the communities that people live?
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Now, I really want to say something quickly about the Oshawa Transit Mall.
Very quickly.
Okay, right now, it's rudimentary compared to other centers across Ontario. It's a barren U-shaped drive. Now, there should be prominent LED signs with real-time schedule information. The blank walls should have big route maps, and there should be a Presto card machine right there. There should be directions of where to find washrooms and the food court. Now, there are other transit centers you should really look at. Just go online and Google Richmond Hill Bus and Langstaff Go, one of the best. Large weatherproof shelters, comfortable seating, food and drink machines, even a washroom. The Oshawa Transit St. Art needs better connections to the mall. They could have LED arrival signs displayed in the food court. There should be a transit information booth inside the mall at the south end near the center where people can get Presto cards and information. And I think the Durham chairman should meet with the owners of the mall and establish a more integrated relationship with the transit system. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Roy.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much. And you have quite the repertoire of a background. I'm just Googling you right now. So I appreciate all the information that you have shared as well. So
anytime.
If you were to share, when you talked about strategies for change, I'm going to ask you what two specific things would you say that we should give concentration to?
Well, I think I said that in Durham, it's to provide service on all the major east-west, north-south arterials, and not just a bunch of little special purpose routes that sort of go who knows where. And, half-hour service with what they call clock face timing, where if that's your stop, you know that at a certain part in the hour it comes or departs. So I think that would be my first priority. But then, of course, that requires looking into the level of bus service and bus drivers. But, tune into the federal government's climate change program should prioritize transit supportive communities, so people, aren't car dependent and have to buy 2 or 3 cars just to get around. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That is what I have on my speakers list. Thank you so much for coming and making your presentation. Sorry for having to cut it off.
I know.
We appreciate you coming. Thank you.
See you again.
Okay. Patrick Ferguson. Is he online? No? No Patrick Ferguson? Okay. Tegan Huber? Tiga, right? Is that right? Okay.
It's Taga. It's okay. No worries. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My delegation today is centered around the proposed $8 million budget cut to the DRT proposed by the Finance and Administration Committee. The OTSU has been vocal about the issues of reliability and accessibility within the service, and these budget cuts will only serve to further aggravate an already strained situation. As someone who relies on the DRT for my daily commute to and from campus, particularly the 901 route, I am deeply concerned about the potential consequences of these budget cuts. During peak times, it is not uncommon to see students standing on the raised platforms at the back of the bus due to overcrowding. Moreover, there have been instances where the bus is filled beyond capacity, resulting in students being left at stops. You would usually see this situation manifesting in the bus saying drop off only. These issues already exist, and the proposed budget cuts will worsen the situation, especially for students with mobility issues who depend on the on-demand transit and already experience wait times. Let us also consider, for example, the potential for longer walking distances to desired destinations and increased overcrowding resulting from the reduced budget, not only through an able-bodied lens, but also through a disability view. Let us consider the added physical strain and discomfort of walking longer distances to access the DRT for students who use canes or wheelchairs, especially during colder months. Given these circumstances, it is absolutely crucial for us to carefully consider the broad consequences of these budget cuts. It is important to view these cuts in the context of the current reality of the DRT service levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions to this delegation? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Samantha Brown, President of Ontario Tech Student Union.
Just Sam works. So I just wanted to talk about like service enhancements and how they impact students. So acknowledgement of also the amount of priorities, the areas of importance, and the financial obligations and restrictions that inform the decisions that you make. But we're just here to talk about the way that those impact students, to give a day and also on the ground experience and also on the ground context for what happens when you make these decisions. So the DRT is involved from a series of small local operators to a series of just a large integrated transit system. Durham is a dynamic region expected to approach 1 million people in the next decade. The customer expectations for transit are rising, and also with the increase of students as post-secondary institutions within these areas are growing families, aging population, and affordability of personal motor vehicles. With that, we have an increased population relying on a system that's struggling to accommodate and accomplish its very goal of getting riders from point A to point B. DRT has noted that service enhancement is critical to DRT's economic competitiveness and also the economic competitiveness of the Durham region in general. In ensuring these employees and customers have access to frequent and reliable service, but there is a clear relationship between ridership and also service hours. In the regional municipality of Durham report regarding the 2024 property tax and budget revised guideline and Commissioner of Finance recommended to the Finance Administration Committee, at number 17, there's a section of 2% reduction impacts and what could happen if you do reduce them to that point. So the report reads that Durham Region Transit, if there's a reduction of $6 million, $181,000 in the description, a further reduction in the planned service enhancement for 2024, the forecast has outlined that Durham Region Transit 10-year service and financing strategy. So this reduction would mean for service level impacts regarding Durham Region Transit, that the service level guidelines would be required, including suspending social equity guidelines. As Tyga was saying, there are a lot of students who use canes, they use walkers, they need to get onto these buses that are already packed. It also impacts the community as well if they cannot get on these buses and also be able to use those services. This morning, I had to watch the bus pass 10 students at one bus stop, and every single time we got to a next bus stop, there's no way for those students to tell if the bus is packed beforehand, because there is no way for them to tell who's on the bus, what time it's coming, unless they're relying on external apps that are not provided by DRT. Then there's also the Durham Region Transit would also be unable to reinstate the hours of service optimizes in January 2024 if these cuts are proposed and also followed through. Lower frequency, reliability, and capacity to meet the demand that we have been highlighting for years as we've been coming as delegation, and how that impacts students, how that impacts them being able to get to their exams, their classes. Just point A to point B for work for other people who are also in the community as well. And that Durham would fall further behind as a comparative municipality in access to public transit. The loss of those generational riders would have no choice but to find other means of transportation. My delegation Ubered here today, and we have transit passes because we knew we wouldn't be here on time, and we were still late because we waited on the bus. So more full buses and buses with customers left at stops, and there would also be a longer on-demand wait time for those students with less access. So those additional hours for service, I would like to ask, even with the proposed almost 60,000 additional service hours to the question, I'd like to propose is sufficient to a system that was already struggling before to accommodate the main, I guess, role of DRT to get people to where they need to be. How would those budget reallocations help the community members? And also, would that not put more strain on things that you're already trying to accomplish with DRT? Thank you.
Are there any, thank you very much. Are there any questions to the delegation? Seeing none, thank you. Angelique Dack? Hi,
Hello.
thank you.
Awesome. Okay. I'm also with the Ontario Tech Student Union as our VP of Downtown, born and raised in Oshawa. So a lot of Durham Region Transit means a lot to me as a lifelong rider who will also be staying in Oshawa post-graduation as well. So I have invested and interested in this as well. In 2022, the Ontario Tech Student Union stood in front of you folks and made the committee aware of inadequate services with past President Josh noting the lack of prioritization of student priorities, even with a sizable percentage of ridership and revenue. Again, in 2023, I stood in front of you and I shared similar sentiments with kind of the feedback that I got from students that I interacted with, also not seeing the prioritize of their feedback. And then again, in 2024, I'm reading the 2024 the 2024 property tax budget with significant cuts to the DRT that once again do not prioritize our student concerns. Last April, we felt like significant changes were going to be coming from the region as they committed to doubling in the bus services with 127% service hour increased by 2032. We celebrated this as a win and really saw our student concerns being heard. But again, with this property tax budget, we're seeing a 36.4% service hour reduction, which is specified as permanent. So our staff and us are frankly a little confused as we're going to make this goal in the next 8 years to increase by 127%. We're already putting ourselves behind. The report itself says that customers will be required to walk further, wait longer hours, and experience longer travel times, which all current feedback from our students is saying that these are concerns to them, especially as it relates to accessibility. Myself, I had to quit one of my 3 jobs because it took an hour and a half to get there. And so that's lost revenue for me while balancing my full-time studies. And so when we talk about the UPass and how much it costs to our students, I'm not somebody who qualifies for it. So I pay out of pocket and I'm still having issues justifying the $150 price tag to our students, even though I know it can be significantly higher for them. $150 in affordability crisis for both food and housing is somebody's grocery bill. It's a portion of their rent. And so it's hard to then justify to these students who have to decide between putting food on the table for their families as primary caregivers and a bus pass, which they feel like they should be able to opt out of. And I'm like, no, it saves you money. And they're like, well, I'd rather walk an hour to class instead of paying this price because I need to put food on the table. And so we have this unique opportunity of 3 post-secondary institutions. Again, Oshawa born and raised, I know the impact that our institutions have on our citizens. And we're building this talented and passionate student base that we want to retain in Durham Region. Again, Durham Region is one of the fastest growing areas with a projected population of 1.3 million by 2051. And so this is not just a student concern. Me as a community member, it's one of my very many concerns. The worst part of it, prior to these cuts, I've been seeing significant improvements as a community member with reliability and an attempt to address the overcrowding. We just welcomed Durham Region Transit to both of our campuses, the north and the downtown, so that they could have face-to-face kind of feedback from students, because we think that is really, really impactful, not only getting the data, but also the analytical from our students, with Sam just noting that she routinely has buses pass her and not knowing when the next one's going to come. Imagine with a mobility device. Imagine 2 mobility devices at one of the stops. I routinely pass Lake Ridge, and so to see people in mobility devices and my bus pass them, they're the people who need the bus right away in order to get critical health care. And so I think this is the opportune moment to prioritize investment, increasing service frequency, and deploying larger buses to meet the growing demand. And doubling of services is a great start, but it won't resolve our overcrowding issue. Again, our students make up 23% of ridership and invest easily over $2 million annually to Durham Region Transit just in the UPass. And so for me, it poses an interesting question to our students if the UPass is even worth it anymore with the introduction of the One Pass. And so I believe that we need to continue our commitment to the transit service finance strategy, because without it, we're going to see brilliant young new professionals similar to myself leaving Durham Region, even if we want to stay here. Again, I'm born and raised in Oshawa. I want to die in Oshawa. However, things like this limit my employment opportunities, and so I might have to look for work elsewhere. And so I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Brenner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the delegation, thank you again for your passion and keep coming back, and I really appreciate that. I do want to ask you a very pointed question based on your presentation, and I'll preface it by starting off by saying that being aware of the work of the student union as far back as when I first became a member of this executive, and the number of times that the union has appeared before this executive in Durham Regional Transit. Could you please confirm, of the 3 changes that I'm going to ask you, the following? Do you see the level of service since April of 2023 to current either 1, improved, same as, or deteriorated?
You can tell I have a political science degree because I'm going to say it's kind of. I would say a little bit of yes and no. In terms of reliability, I've been seeing an increase on specific routes. So I'm a frequent user of the 901 and the 902. The 901 specifically has dramatically had those increases. However, the 902, which directly feeds into that line for our students, I'm seeing 30-minute delays. And I work overnight shifts, so to then wait outside for an additional 30 minutes on top of the 10 that I've already waited, gets a little windy outside. So that route, I haven't seen an increased reliability. However, I have for the 901. And then when it comes to overcrowding, I'm still consistently seeing that on buses that happen to have with our students. And so the frequency currently, I know there is some projected frequency changes as well. I don't want to speak out of term in terms of those numbers. Again, I work 3 jobs, so sometimes those numbers get a little bit fuzzy for me, but anecdotally, I've been seeing still overcrowding and students standing on the second platform, which does pose a significant risk to their safety. So reliability, some lanes, overcrowding, still very much so on those student-heavy lanes, such as the 901. I hope that answers all the aspects of
It
your question.
does. A very fair answer from you, by the way, and a very balanced answer. The next question is more tied. You've provided the overview from your perspective of living in Oshawa. As a student, you're aware that students from all over the Durham region and beyond rely on DRT to get to the campuses in Oshawa. I'm going to assume that you have a lot of contact both with the student union and with those that rely on transit outside of the city of Oshawa. Same question. How would you rate the change of service for those that do not live in Oshawa but need to get to Oshawa from their places of wherever they're located, be it Pickering, be it Ajax, even be it Scarborough or Whitby? Would you say the same, no change, or deteriorated? And that's from outside of Oshawa to get to school in Oshawa.
I'll be very frank with my answer. I interact with mostly our up year students, and they expect for their buses to be late. So they take significantly early buses in order to then compensate for that. So I don't know the answer to your question because my students are coming 2 hours early to class in order to make sure that they're on that bus and they're in the classroom when they need to be. So I don't know, unfortunately.
Well, I think your answer is a very fair one and probably more fair than mine would have been, to be perfectly honest. But I think what my takeaway is, I think I heard you say they have to get there 2 hours earlier. Well, I know what grade I'd give it, so thank you.
Thank you. General Manager Holmes, did you want to make a comment?
Thank you. And through the chair, just, I may be misinterpreting from what I heard in the three delegations. I just want to confirm again, I'm preempting our budget discussion here, but I just wanted to confirm there are no cuts to service in 2024 being proposed. It is an increase of roughly 60,000 service hours that will be going in. I just want to ensure that any further delegates are aware that there's no service cuts planned this year. It's actually significant growth of the network. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tian, sorry. You come every month and I can't remember how to say your name. I'm so sorry.
I'll get started. So today I wanted to come here and discuss and connect my own lived experiences of taking DRT to the 2024 business and budget plan that's being presented before us. I live in a household with one car, which means I don't have access to it all the time. And most of the time when I need to take transit to get to school, when I need to get to school, I have to take transit to get to the GO station to commute downtown for school. And when I don't have access to a car here in Durham, I sometimes take DRT to the library or to get groceries. And the main bus route I take here is Route 302 here in Whitby. It runs along Brock Street through Brooklyn to the Ontario Tech Durham College North Campus. And my experiences on the 302 often mirror many other riders' experiences and the experiences of all the delegates here today. As of now, Route 302 buses run only every 30 minutes, except during peak times when it's every 15. The frequency has not changed in years, even though buses are often fully packed, and bus drivers have to stop much more often to pick up even more people. And this can cause knock-on delays down the line and crowding on the bus, which impacts riders' abilities to get to school, work, and appointments on time. I know this myself, as I can count numerous times where the bus has been late and I've missed my GO train connection or a transfer to another DRT bus. During peak periods, the 302B route often doesn't even come on time and is so late that the trip is canceled, and 20 to 30 people have to wait 15 to 20 minutes for the next bus. And this is on top of the crowds of people getting off the train and everyone down the line waiting for their bus. Ridership along the 302 has exploded with the growth that we're seeing in Whitby, Brooklyn, and North Oshawa. There have been numerous times during the midday and weekend when I've been on the bus, and it's packed full of people, again, going shopping, to work, to appointments. And I remember a few months ago, I was at Whitby Go, and this lady asked me when the next bus was coming, and I checked my phone, and I said, it would be 25 minutes, and she said to me, if they ran the bus more often, then it would be more convenient for me. And she told me that normally she just drives to the GO station, but the one day where she did take the bus, she had to wait 25 minutes. And I think right there, that's part of the problem that we're facing. So many more people in Durham would take transit if it was frequent and reliable for them. The proposed budget before us tackles some of these issues. Almost 60,000 new service hours are being proposed is an amazing step up from where we could have been with 0 proposed new service hours. And again, I hope within these service hours, Route 302 will be upgraded to a minimum of 15 minutes, as stated in DRT's own social equity guidelines, because many Whitby residents, like myself and beyond, would immensely benefit from it. And the allocation of where these service hours go appears promising. Restoring routes cut this past January, new service to Seaton, increasing on-demand access, and improving service and reliability where it's needed the most. However, this isn't enough in the face of skyrocketing ridership. Only 85% of the approved funding from the 10-year transit service and financing strategy is being implemented this year. New service to fast-growing areas of Durham, improvements to routes that are chronically late, and operators to actually drive them have to be pushed back. 10,000 potential new service hours, in addition to the ones proposed, are gone because we cannot find the funding to pursue a transit strategy that's been approved by Council. Deferring investment into our transit system only means Durham Region will continue to fall behind. Experiences that I and hundreds of thousands of other riders face on a daily basis of long wait times, chronically late buses, and overcrowding will continue if we don't make a real and lasting change to our transit system. Again, our system will fall behind other municipalities in the GTHA, our economic competitiveness will be reduced, and we won't be able to keep up with population growth. And as I said in the last tech meeting, if we're planning for massive growth over the next 10, 15 years, we need essential services and infrastructure to keep up. And public transit is one of these. And I'm urging all of you and your fellow regional council colleagues to follow through of the 10-year transit and financing strategies so that we have safe, frequent, and reliable transit in Durham. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions to this delegation? If not, thank you so much. Any chance Patrick Ferguson came in? Okay. All right. So we're going to go back to the agenda to presentations. General Manager Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Lorraine. Sorry, Lorraine.
Good afternoon. My name is Lorraine Hogg, and I'm a longtime resident of Pickering. I would like to address the business plan and budget today. We continue to see our transit services being slashed, typically being told it's because of budget constraints. Your riders understand budget issues, as we all deal with them every day. Lack of transit causes both financial and emotional hardship for your riders. People are forced to dig deeper into their pockets to be able to get themselves to work or school on time, or even just to be able to participate in life events, since transit is often unavailable or unreliable. Leaving earlier isn't necessarily helpful for this very reason. I would strongly suggest that DRT take a good look at their own service proximity or walking system guideline, which aims to have 95% of dwellings within an 800-meter walk of a bus stop. I was advised that most dwellings are in fact within 500 meters. These stats overlook the fact, though, that many homes within 500 meters or even 800 meters of a stop receive no off-peak service at all, thereby meaning that DRT isn't meeting their own service guidelines. The people of Durham Region are not having their needs met, yet under the Ontario Rights Commission, quote, every citizen of Ontario has the right to equal treatment in receiving public services, which includes public transit services. Transit providers have the legal responsibility to ensure that transit systems are accessible to all Ontarians. For many, access to public transit is a necessity in order to receive an education, find and keep a job, or use basic public services like healthcare. I would suspect that a bus stop within 800 meters of a home doesn't meet this requirement, especially when service is often unavailable for large chunks of time. Riders and drivers try to provide feedback about the challenges posed, and yet it continues to be harder and harder to use. Adding insult to injury, you're looking to raise fares again for a subpar service. And I suspect that level of service would not be considered accessible if it were impacting you or those you love. As a non-driver who appreciates my independence, I'm a transit user, and often my family and friends will discourage me from being out at night because of safety concerns and the knowledge that even utilizing transit coming home doesn't make things safer. The only way to truly understand the problems with the transit system, is to actually get out there and use it. I would therefore like to ask, how many of you who work for DRT, designing routes and preparing schedules, or executive members who make decisions on behalf of its ridership, actually use transit regularly, specifically to travel from neighborhoods that have low or non-existent service levels? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions to this resident? Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, we'll go back to presentations. General Manager Holmes.
Good afternoon, Chair Crawford, commissioners, staff, and members of the public joining us today. I expect you've seen or heard a version of the quote on today's title slide, and for our purposes here today, it refers to the quality or quantity of something. It's a quote attributed to Barbara Mikulski, a former social worker and American politician representing Maryland, and it reads, "You can't get more for less, you get what you pay for." As you know, since 2019, DRT has been committed to evolving the transit network to be dynamic and able to respond to pressures such as a pandemic, ridership recovery, and availability of resources. Further, gone are the days when public transit was considered the travel option of last resort for residents on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. In 2024 and beyond, public transit in Durham is crucial to the economy of the region and affordability of all residents. It's crucial to equity for residents of all abilities, and it's a significant determining factor to achieving our target carbon emission reductions during this climate crisis. DRT is positioned to successfully implement record-level investments in revenue service and to grow the transit network to meet the increasing expectations of transit users, residents, businesses, and our educational stakeholders. You will see the proposed 2024 business plan and budget later in the meeting, and I just want to say that we're extremely excited to get on with our plans for 2024. As you know, preparing a budget each year and getting it over the finish line is a massive undertaking. I want to thank Chris and Alex and our entire DR team for their tireless efforts in putting it together. As well as on behalf of the DRT staff and transit customers, I want to express our gratitude to Nancy Taylor, Nicole Pincombe, and the finance team, as well as CEO Baxter Traher for their leadership, guidance, and support in preparing the proposed 2024 budget, which highlights an unprecedented commitment by the region to advance the level of public transit service. Next slide, please. For January 2024, ridership continued to remain high, 30% higher than January of 2023, and also exceeded our 29 ridership levels. Customers continue to increasingly adopt Presto fare payment options, which was up 2% relative to January of last year and 0.8% higher than December of 23. Finally, demand response ridership continues to improve, delivering 21,622 trips in January, an increase of 23% compared to January of 22, and that included an 18% increase in specialized transit ridership. I'm going to touch a little later on the new demand response metrics a little later on in this presentation. Next slide, please. As you likely heard Monday, the One Fare program launched February 26 and will save customers money when connecting between the TTC and neighboring transit agencies. On February 9th, DRT was pleased to host a One Fare announcement by the Associate Minister of Transportation, who was accompanied by MPPs Barnes, Coe, and McCarthy, along with Regional Chair John Henry and Tech Chair Marilyn Crawford. It was a great opportunity to interact with DRT staff. And in fact, the staff of the Associate Minister commented that the DRT team was the most engaged group of transit employees that they had the pleasure of working with during the One Fare promotions. DRT hosted another engagement session on February the 12th for customers registered with Specialized Transit. A record 83 people participated in the engagement session, 78 participated in person, and 5 joined remotely. Effective 2025, we are going to integrate this session into the relaunch of an annual accessibility forum. Next slide, please. We've heard feedback from customers and also from our commissioners that the reliability of on-demand is not where it needs to be. We've been able to validate that feedback with the 3 newly available measures that are available through our demand response platform. The platform has also enabled us to break out the data by Specialized Transit and the regular on-demand trips. The good news is on-time performance, which represents the percentage of customer pickups that occur as scheduled up to 5 minutes after the pickup window. Our target is 80%, similar to scheduled service. And for January, the on-time performance was 80.3% for Specialized Transit trips and 85.4% for on-demand trips. The next metric that we have is the difference between the requested and the booked trip time, for which we have set an initial target of 15 minutes. This measures how closely a trip can be scheduled to the customer's preferred time. The difference for Specialized Transit trips was 12 minutes and 17 minutes for on-demand. The third metric is unaccommodated rate, or the percent of customer requested trips that we were unable to schedule within our service guidelines or capacity. The guideline for scheduling an on-demand trip is within 30 minutes within the urban areas and 60 minutes for rural service areas. We haven't established a target yet for various reasons. First, as you'll see, the rate of unaccommodated rate for on-demand trips is just simply too high. Secondly, the capacity increases that are planned as part of the 10-year transit and financing strategy will significantly influence this unaccommodated rate year over year. And third, the objective of on-demand service is to provide all residents the ability to book trips near real time, to provide all customers with the same trip booking flexibility. The January unaccommodated rates were 5.4% for Specialized Transit and 37.4% for on-demand trips. The reason for the discrepancy is attributed to the trip booking process and our current capacity. DRT has maintained the long-standing process to allow Specialized Transit trips to be booked up to 7 days before the intended day of travel, whereas on-demand trips can be booked the day before travel consistent with industry best practices. By the time on-demand customers can access trip bookings, significant capacity has been reserved by Specialized Transit trips. As highlighted in the 2024 budget report, over 13,000 annual revenue service hours will be assigned to increase on-demand capacity in both the urban and the rural areas of the region. Staff will be coming back later in the year with an aspirational target for the unaccommodated rate in consideration of planned annual revenue service growth and opportunities for us to modernize service delivery policies towards the objective to eliminate the need for advanced trip bookings. Next slide, please. This is just a graphical representation of the data, and I'll just leave it here for a moment so you can review. Next slide, please. While we're on the topic of modernizing service delivery, the first of your 6 electric buses enter the Nova Bus assembly line on January the 25th, and we're expecting the delivery of all 6 buses at the Raleigh Depot at Oshawa in June to align with the implementation of the redesigned electrical infrastructure and charging equipment. As you may know, as a result of the fire, we have had to transition to outdoor charging for these 6 buses. I also today want to highlight Transit Operator and Appreciation Day, which we will be celebrating on March the 18th. We encourage the public to follow DRT social media March 18th through 24th as we celebrate the exceptional people of DRT who keep Durham moving. Next slide, please. My second last slide here today is a picture of a DRT bus that we had at the launch of the DRPS campaign to stop human trafficking. We're very pleased to be able to collaborate with DRPS to wrap one of the buses in support of their campaign to promote awareness of human trafficking in the region. For more information, please visit stopht.com, or you can call the Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-579-1520, extension 4888. Next slide, please. Thank you, and pleased to answer any feedback from the committee.
Thank you, General Manager Holmes. I have Commissioner Schumer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and to the General Manager, and thank you very much for the presentation and the information. And it's good to see some of these new stats coming online. And speaking of which, so the on-demand unaccommodated rate stat, so that's system-wide, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Is there going to be any chance that that rate can be, say, broken down more between rural and urban, or even more so than that, into areas? Because I can only imagine that there would be maybe quite a discrepancy between some areas of the region versus others with respect to that percentage.
Through the chair, yes, that is possible. We don't have that with us today, but I will look at when we can provide that information to tech.
Okay, and I guess my last question still on that stat is, I mean, you mentioned in your presentation that having to do with capacity. Is that the only issue, or can we maybe expect to see kind of a breakdown as to the different causes for these unaccommodated trips? Is it purely a capacity issue? Because sometimes we hear from residents that there were different issues at play.
Through the chair, capacity is impacted by a number of factors, and we will come back. So when we come back with the data separated by rural and urban, we'll also provide a summary of the factors influencing capacity.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Brenner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the General Manager. Bill, thank you for the presentation and the thoroughness in terms of the statistics when you focus on the reliability and all those other areas. But the question that I do have is, do you have statistics that focus on, I guess, I'm trying to think of the right phrase, but I want to look at, do you have the statistics that show our reliability to provide public transit within a municipality, not through a municipality? So it's not, because there's no question our 920 routes are at capacity, it's crowded. There's no question that steps were taken to increase dependability to get on time. But do we have statistics that talk about the on time, the volume of transit within a municipality, which means not traveling through it, but traveling within it to get to point A and B?
Through the chair, it's challenging for us as a regional transit provider to break it out into individual municipalities, because municipal boundaries really for us, they're blurred. We look at the entire region, how that works. I will, however, take that back and see what data information we may have that might be able to meet that question of the reliability within a municipality.
I think you know where I'm going with this in terms as we get to the business plans later on in the agenda, that I know that you're providing every bit of data that you can provide, but I think the problem is that that's based on the services that we provide and the routes we provide. What it doesn't show is what those routes do in terms of traveling within municipalities. And it's not just about Pickering. I mean, the question that I asked of the delegation, that's the student from Oshawa, it's a very different response in Oshawa, where you can get within Oshawa than some of the other municipalities that you may not be able to get around. But anyway, that's why I asked you that question, to move in that direction, because I think you know where I'm heading.
So through the chair, perhaps we can just chat offline, just
Most
so that we're
definitely.
clear on what the request is, and then we'll again do our best.
Most
to pull that.
definitely, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, and through you to Mr. Holmes. Mr. Holmes, we heard from the students from Ontario Tech about overcrowding and unreliability of the services. You alluded to adding service hours. I believe it's 60 is that hours of, what, 60 hours?
Correct. Through the chair, and I'm preempting our budget discussion, but our proposed service hour increase for 24 is approximately 60,000 hours, yes.
Is some of that, is that going to be used to alleviate some of the pressures that the students alluded to during their presentation?
Through the chair, I'll respond to the question this way, and it was mentioned through some of the delegations that the region has a 10-year transit service and financing strategy out through 2032 with annual investments in significant service growth, that by 2032 we will have increased the size of the level of service by 127%. That plan is still intact. You'll see that in the budget presentation today in regards to significant steps forward. It will be a gradual increase and improvement in the network as we increase that level of service and capacity across the network. But customers should experience annual improvements in capacity, reliability, and access.
So you're not saying that the improvements will be forthcoming within the next semester or what? No?
Through the chair, there will be annual increases, so we'll see every year it'll get a little better. In terms of when people will see that in 2024, pending budget approval by council at the end of March, we'll then need to hire the additional operators, we'll need to secure the additional vehicle assets. So we'll see that service coming online a little later in the year.
And through the chair, just as a follow-up to what Councillor Brenner was alluding to, I believe what he's saying along Highway 2 in Bowmanville and Curtis, there's a bus. But students and regular residents are having difficulty getting to that bus stop because there is no interior bus service into the community itself. Is that going to be addressed anytime soon?
Through the chair, that's exactly the objective of the 10-year strategy, is to increase the level of service across the community, not just on the main corridors, but also within communities, so that it is more convenient and accessible for everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Watton?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to General Manager Holmes. I have a question, and maybe this is perhaps better directed to the budget, but I'll put it out there and you can redirect if you feel it's necessary. So we did hear from a lot of the students and so on, about the 10-year plan and the need for capacity, reliability, et cetera. And then we did hear that this year's budget at this point in time is 85% or will achieve 85% of what we were hoping to achieve in 2024. If we only achieve that in 2024, how do we recoup that moving forward?
That is a question I know is part of our budget discussion. So if it's okay with you, I'll defer that to Chris when he's discussing the budget.
Okay, certainly. Because respecting it's a challenge, and I think you were also given direction from council on what level or what percentage you could put into the budget this year. So even should the need be to increase it, you kind of had marching papers to stay within a guideline. Is that correct?
That's correct. The council approved the guideline to which we planned the 2024 service to, yes.
Thank you, and I'll save my other questions for the budget. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, do we move right on to Chris? Do you want to come up and do your presentation? Chris and Nicole. That Nicole. Sorry.
Good morning,
Thank
or good
you.
afternoon,
Good
sorry.
afternoon.
So good afternoon, Chair Crawford, Chair Henry, members of Transit Executive Committee, and staff and members of the public. I just want to take a quick minute to provide some high-level introductory comments from the finance perspective, and I appreciate the opportunity to do so this afternoon. I'd like to take a moment just to thank the dedication and the hard work of the DRT leadership team, in particular Deputy Manager Chris Hornberg, Alex Mack, and the rest of the DRT team under General Manager Holmes' leadership in terms of the development of the budget that is before you this afternoon. Thank you. So the budget that's before you achieves the Regional Council approved guideline of the 7.5%. It's been informed by the 10-year transit service and financing strategy and supports critical investments to meet the needs of our growing community. So there's a proposed increase that's been talked about this afternoon of 59,665 new revenue service hours. It advances the fleet electrification plan as well, in support of the Durham Corporate Climate Action Plan, and includes 34 new electric buses and infrastructure pending approval of federal funding, partner funding on those initiatives as well. It provides for a number of asset management renewal projects and capital infrastructure, and responds to significant inflationary pressures and capital cost escalations, as well as investing in critical staff resources that are needed to support the expanded and modernized transit service. In terms of process, following your deliberations on the budget today, it will go before Finance and Administration Committee on March the 19th, and then on to Regional Council on March the 27th for deliberation. I'll just pass it over now to Chris to provide all of the details on the budget. Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Will we get the slides up by any chance? If not, I can still do it. But and if you could skip ahead to slide 3. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I've gone too far for you. That one will go there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone. Commissioners, CAO, Chair Crawford, Chair Henry, and of course, members of the public. My name is Chris Hornberg. I'm the Deputy General Manager of Business Services, and it's my pleasure to provide some updates with respect to the budget that's before you today. I'm not going to read the slides to you. I'm just going to highlight and perhaps expand on some options and also try to consider some of the questions that were asked and address some of the comments that were made. With respect to 2023 and service accomplishments or service improvements, the first thing I want to highlight is the successful completion of our service model transition. This is a really important milestone for DRT. It provides a more seamless integration of all conventional service across the region, as well as moves our on-demand service delivery to one external provider. And so from a business perspective and an operational perspective, certainly quite an achievement. Members, you'll remember that last year we brought forward a report with respect to PowerOn to assist us in delivering our fleet electrification. And since that point, we've been in constant communications and negotiations with them, and we plan on bringing a report forward in April, so next month, with a final recommendation on kind of the outcomes or a recommendation of how to move forward. And then finally, with respect to the last bullet, and General Manager Holmes touched on this, but in 2023, we did see a surge in ridership. And across the whole year, it represents about 98% of peak pre-pandemic ridership. But kind of hidden in the fine print there is, if you just look at the last 6 months, so kind of from the summer onward, we actually achieved ridership of about 110% of peak pre-pandemic levels. And that's why I'm comfortable saying to you all today that the trends suggest that ridership is continuing to increase, which is obviously a great news story for DRT. Next slide, please. For community capacity building, I want to highlight an innovative pilot I think that you all heard of before, where we've collaborated with social services. We're about technically 3 months into the pilot, but about 1.5 of those have been truly operational, and it has to date kind of exceeded expectations. So I just want to highlight some new stats that we got. We are funding 2 dedicated outreach workers, and I'll talk about that later in the presentation as well. But in that month and a half, they have completed approximately just under 1,900 individual engagements. 167 of those have been specific to our bus stops. with many of them happening overnight. And critically for us, 16 of those have come directly from requests from our operators, which is a really important stat because it shows to our operators that there is an expert dedicated resource that can help with respect to engaging with vulnerable populations. And we expect that number to increase as our operators become more familiar and aware of that resource availability. So we're early on in the pilot, but please expect to see more in the coming months with respect to that. Next slide, please. And Nicole, I was planning on turning it back over to you for this one.
Apologies. Sorry. So this slide here, what this illustrates to you is it provides a breakdown of the gross expenditures on the left-hand side of the graph. So it breaks down the composition of the budget, and you can see the majority of the budget, or 72% of that, comes from capital costs, and then the other pieces with operations being about 11.9% of the budget. So the right-hand side of the graph explains how those expenditures are financed. Again, property tax, because of the nature of the 2024 budget before you, there's a large number of major capital infrastructure projects that are there. So you'll see there's a brand new bus facility planned in the north of Durham, and that's a very significant capital project, which is what's driving that portion of the expenditure graph so significantly. And that's funded in part through ZETI, or hopefully funded in part through the Zero Emissions Transit Fund, or ZETF funding. That $153.5 million there is their 50% contribution towards those costs, with the balance of that being funded regionally from reserves and reserve funds for the most part, and a little bit of debt financing in there as well on that project. So that's really what's sort of influencing these pie charts. Operations then is largely funded through property taxes and through the fares as composition there.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please. So the next few slides really highlight some of our key investments in 2024. And again, I'm going to highlight or expand on a couple from each. So the key takeaway on this slide, and as kind of has been discussed, is the fact that DRT is adding significant new service. Through an investment of $5.9 million, we're adding just under 60,000 hours of new service, which does include 36 new positions, the majority of which are dedicated to operations. In fact, 29 of them are bus drivers. There's an operations supervisor with the remainder going towards our maintenance staff. I'll also highlight the bottom line there, the $13.3 million. That is the increase in our base budget, and that represents approximately 1.6% of the regional tax levy. Next slide, please. So I highlighted the amazing pilot we have with our social services department earlier. You can see there on line 2 the investment reflected, which is about $250,000. And then from a capital perspective, I'll highlight the 2 line items at the bottom there. Significant investments are planned, again, assuming we receive that Zero Emission Transit Fund approval. If we do, we are looking at ordering kind of 2 sets of buses. Some are dedicated to growth, some are dedicated to replacement. And we would be looking to release an RFP in Q2 of this year. And hopefully those buses would then arrive kind of late 2025, early 2026 to coincide with electrical charging infrastructure, which you'll see highlighted on the next slide. Next slide, please. So again, here you can see, and again, largely contingent on ZETF, but obviously the big line item there is the new facility on Thornton, $240 million, as well as additional charging infrastructure for that electric fleet. Next slide, please. So I think this slide probably speaks to some of the questions, as well as some of the delegations that have brought up. With respect to deferrals, what DRT has tried to accomplish, with help from finance certainly, is to present a balanced approach to growth. And to do so, we have deferred some small to medium capital-based work. But in order to keep those projects moving, what we're essentially trying to do is to do the studies and do some of the design work this year and kind of purposely postpone some of that construction work until next year. And that helps us in order to meet the budget guideline. We've also deferred some staff, which again is trying to help us to meet that budget guideline. And then our key goal moving forward is obviously to maximize the amount of new service hours that we can put out. And so that's where you can see that we are meeting that 85% target of so it's about 60,000 of the approximate 70,000 that's been identified in that 10-year strategy. With respect to the bottom half of the slide there, the risks and uncertainties, I don't think these will come to a surprise as anyone here. With increased ridership, which is certainly a good news story, this does increase demand on the service, and so we may be forced to look at providing service to the highest amount of demand by the highest amount of customers, so really maximizing the service across the network. I spoke about senior order of government funding through ZETF, and a lot of our capital projects are kind of conditional upon that. But I should also note that in general, transit operations rely heavily on senior government funding. And so it's not just the capital assets, it's for operations in general, and that's something that does certainly impact us. And finally, while it is listed here as a risk, the recovery from the Raleigh bus fire does continue to pose some kind of operational impacts and operational challenges. Now, we have mitigated those, and certainly with assistance from our transit partners, but there are kind of ongoing monitoring that's required as a result of that. Next slide, please. And for the last slide, this just highlights some of the kind of forecasted pressures as well as some strategic considerations moving forward. So you'll see that we have an ask for 1.1 million in new staff. These, and I should say, these were not initially part of the transit strategy, but that's okay. That document is meant to be dynamic in nature. Nature does require kind of periodic review and updates. And so, what you're going to see in the years forward is kind of a review of staffing that is based on operational realities in the field, ridership, those types of things. We're also going to see a relief of about $1 million through fare increases of this year, as well as the UPass adjustments. And finally, as I mentioned previously, the unknowns around kind of senior government funding. We continue to advocate strongly, both through our networks and our partners, as well as individually, to ensure the need for funding is well understood at all other orders of government. And with that, I'll say thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Commissioner Schumer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of clarifying points. What are we seeing, or what do we project to see as the impact on funding from DCs with respect to the provincial legislation that's come down or could be changed over the next few years with respect to transit?
So, if I may, through the chair, there's two things. We have modeled, based on the current scenario of what we see with Bill 23, that there's about a $33 million shortfall in this 10-year window that we would have to recover from tax rates or, utilizing reserve funds, which means that then we'd have to backstop that with tax rates. The other key thing, though, is we are looking at updating our DC background study for transit to pick up all of the enhanced cost with electrification, as well as the inflationary impacts of the major buildings. But if we now are forced to do an analysis where is it better to not do that because we're going to get hit by 80%, so we'll lose. So we haven't modeled that per se yet, because we now have to decide, do we come back to this committee with that and then end up at 80%, which means we could have less than what we're collecting now.
Okay, thank you very much. And given the recent announcement with the fare integration, are we seeing or expecting, I guess the expecting would be the better word, are we expecting much of an increase in ridership as a result of that fare integration?
Thank you. Through the chair. We are less than a month in. The projections of the One Fare program is that across the GTA, it will result in an increase in cross-boundary travel into Toronto. The level of cross-boundary travel will really be determined, as we've been talking here in general, by the level of service provided. Level of service is really a dictator of ridership. So we're not expecting a windfall by any means, but it will benefit those individuals who will now be able to leave their car at home and travel into Toronto or into Durham and not pay that double fare. So we are expecting to see an increase in ridership, but not significant in the overall scheme.
Okay, fair enough. I know I was asking a crystal ball question there, and I didn't expect a big answer, but it will be interesting to see where that plays out. I want to thank staff for getting this budget put together and living within the means that the council dictated. I fully support transit. I think it ties in most closely with our climate emergency that we declared, and I think it would be important to remember, if I could just mention a comment, Madam Chair. We had a number of delegations today that spoke to the burden that fares and service levels have on them. I can only agree with them. Up here in the north, it's even more difficult. We don't have any scheduled service in Brock Township. We have on demand, and it is a struggle for everybody here. And transit across the province has been a struggle for many years. I would really encourage the delegates to also, if they have not already, approach the federal government and the provincial government. But most notably, probably the provincial government. The provincial government is going to put a huge additional strain on transit, as the Commissioner of Finance just indicated, to the tune of millions, tens of millions of dollars that would otherwise be paid for by developers. And there's no guarantee that those savings are going to flow down to those affordable or attainable housing units that are going to be purchased. And it's going to put a huge strain on us, and it's imposed by the province. So they're not making anything better by a lot of their actions, and I would encourage them to speak and petition to the higher levels of government to assist or at least stop hindering municipal contributions to transit operations. And I would just like to remind them as well, we have a very difficult decisions to make at this level and at the council level, because there is such a huge burden placed on the property tax, and those people struggle to put food on the table as well. And if we start pulling a lot of money away from them through property tax increases, we're hurting others too. So it's difficult, and I sympathize with the delegates fully. But they have to realize that there's a lot of problems being placed on a lot of people, no matter which way this or other budgets go. But once again, I would urge them to speak with their provincial and federal representatives with respect to these areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brenner.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll focus my questions to the presentation that's before us from staff, and then I'll reserve the right to ask questions when the report comes forward. So referring to the presentation, I want to first go to page 12 for a minute. And on page 12, it's accomplishments, service improvements. The phrase that I'm interested in, it's got launched 3 local routes, and then it says the local routes. Would it be possible, can you define what is a local route versus a non-local route?
Commissioner Brenner, is that slide 2?
I'm sorry, slide 12.
Slide 5. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it shows up on my agenda as 12 of 91.
I found the exact bullet point, and I'm going to defer that to Nicole. Thank you.
Through the chair, a great question. As part of DRT service guidelines, we have different route categories that we use as part of standard transit planning. So one of those that you might be familiar with would be our Pulse network, for example, which operates often cross-regional across routes like Highway 2, Rosslyn Road, Taunton Road. A local route is a little bit more often a catch-all term for different route types we use, including base, something that previously used to operate called a Go Connector route, or local routes which operate often within a given geographical area. That's not necessarily municipality specific, but it often serves a north-south corridor or a particular east-west corridor rather than perhaps diverting cross-regionally, and often may not see the same level of ridership that we might see on something like a very frequent pulse corridor. So it's a bit of a route category just for a smaller geographic area or particular travel type.
So focusing on your response, and I understand when you're talking about the geographic, could be a grid system, geographic within a municipality, but you don't call it municipality within. Okay, so you launched 3 local routes. How many local routes were lost or changed over the last year?
Commissioner, through the chair, I'll be honest, I don't have the number specifically handy. When we're referring to the year of 2023, which was the accomplishment section being referenced in the presentation, 2023 saw an overall increase in the service being offered throughout the network. I think that to January 2024 is a bit of a different conversation, but looking at 2023, because it was based on a different sort of a different ridership increase that we saw, 2023 saw an increase in service offered throughout the network.
And I appreciate your answer and your candidness, and you're correct. 2024 launch in January saw a different picture. In looking at our accomplishments and more of the optics, what it appears from where I'm sitting and from where delegations, where they're sitting and some of the users, did transit reduce the numbers of local routes in order to accomplish the goal, and I'm not saying they're wrong goals, the goals of reliability, timing on the non-local routes? Was it like Peter to pay Paul?
So, Commissioner, through the chair, in January of 2024, as we've echoed in previous conversations and tech meetings, select service was reallocated from lower performing routes within the network onto our busiest corridors within the network to support increasing concerns for capacity as well as for reliability on some of those key corridors. So that was the case in January of 2024 on some of those routes based on lower ridership, lower performance, and the need to reallocate to support areas of highest ridership. That's correct.
Commissioner Brenner, can we keep this to the budget?
I'm doing it on the presentation that's in front of me, and I'm relying on the slides that are just in front of me, Madam Chair. When we get to the budget.
It's loose.
I understand that I'm asking a lot of detailed questions, but it's based on what was presented and what's physically in front of me. Can I ask staff to refer to slide 6, which is page 18 for members of our agenda, 18 of 91, and slide 6 of the presentation. And the question that I'm interested in getting an answer to is found in reductions and deferrals. And it's the second line, deferred plan staff request to meet budget guideline, which may result in reduced innovation capacity and other challenges. From what staff has written in this presentation, would it be possible to get a clarification on what, in fact, I guess it would be the staff requests that were reduced and where we're going to have, and what is meant by reduced innovation capacity and other challenges. So some clarity on innovation capacity and other challenges based on what staff actually had requested.
Certainly, I can answer that question through the chair. When referring to reduced innovation capacity and other challenges, what we're referring to is project managed work, business transformation type of work, items that would allow us to, where investments now might result or yield savings in the future, those types of things in order to meet the budget guideline.
So there was not looking at the innovation capacity and challenges in terms of routes and service demands based on our riders.
I would suggest that, generally speaking, that's true. The way that this bullet was intended to read was that it was for that business transformation style work, so more kind of support staff, those types of things, not necessarily directed specifically for routes. That said, supporting these types of positions can result in certainly in operational efficiencies, which by definition, right, efficiencies could improve performance across kind of DRT as an organization. So a bit of a yes and no type answer.
So would I be correct from the slide then, deferred plan staff requests, that if the guidelines weren't the guidelines, the staff had a different request that they had to reduce to comply with the guidelines?
The budget, the proposed budget put forward is considers the guideline that we were presented.
I understand that. I'm
Sorry.
just using the words that are on the slide presentation. That the deferred request, meaning that there must have been a request that was deferred.
Correct. There were staff that were contemplated that were not put forward.
Which would have changed innovation and the other points.
So through the chair, just in response to that,
Sorry.
that's okay. So I think the intent of this language is to say we have plans for investing in other administrative staff that may result in longer term efficiencies, et cetera. But we did not defer any frontline services. That's not what this is intended to rely on.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the latitude.
Yes, I think it would be useful through you, Madam Chair, just to remind committee that we were asked to report back. We initially came in with a 7.5% increase for regional services. We were asked to report back on what the impact of a 6.5 and 5.5% target would be, and at the end, Council approved a 5% target, so 0.5% below what we had even reported back on. So this has necessitated very careful line-by-line reviews across the corporation and great focus on prioritizing across the corporation. So you'll see these pressures in every budget presentation going forward. Thank you.
If I might, since I had been the one that asked a question, and I'm not disagreeing with what our CEO was saying. However, at our last transit executive, what did pass was asking about the impact of the reintroducing any of the services that changed, what the costs were. So when I've asked a question, it's through that lens. When we get to council and budget deliberations, most definitely I agree with you at the CAO. But for today, I'm just looking at it not through the guidelines, but through the lens of what would it take to bring any of those service levels back that staff talk about deferred, that involve innovation capacity and challenges. That's why the focus of the question. So it wasn't to override a position of council. I just wanted to clarify, and thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garrett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris and Nicole, thanks for the presentation. I want to preface this just a little bit by thanking the whole DRT team. We've had some significant service improvements in Uxbridge, and some of the granular stuff that we've had to deal with recently at a ridership level, your ability to step up and help with those very specific issues is very much appreciated. So thank you to all of you that have been involved in that. I may drift a little bit towards the report, and you can correct me, Madam Chair, if I do. And it kind of builds on the previous comments that we'd said originally, we being council, that we were committed to a 2% levy increase to support transit improvements. And then as we're just hearing from our CEO that we ratcheted that down, this may have been in the report, but I'm not seeing it in the presentation. What % levy increase is actually assigned now? It might be Nicole, to supporting transit going into the future.
I think through the chair, the number is 1.6% that was provided to us. But
Okay.
if anything else from finance, sorry if I.
Okay, fair enough, thanks. Can you give me a sense then, and it's a little bit of a loaded question, but to be able to say what then, and it may help with some of the delegations that we've had. We've talked about the improved service hours, that's been mentioned a couple of times. What are a couple things then that we aren't doing because we as council push back on our previous commitment of the 2%?
So I can, through the chair, I can start to answer that, and it's really kind of that second last slide that refers to some of these items. So with respect to reductions and deferrals, one of the ones that I mentioned was, deferring some small to medium-sized infrastructure repair and upgrade projects in order to try to meet the budget guideline, deferring some staff, which we spoke about. But really, everything here is trying to maximize the amount of service hours, and with respect to the budget guideline, we're still able to achieve 85%. And so those are some elements, but I can turn it over to General Manager Holmes if there's something else.
Thank you, Chris, and through the chair. So what we have, we're not doing in 24 that we had originally planned back in 2022, is that it will impact service that we had planned to some growth areas. So we won't be able to put some scheduled service in there. It'll also affect our ability to address more of the reliability challenges we had. In the report, you'll see that we have reliability issues on corridors in general, but also from construction, and you'll see we've got some dedicated hours there. So we've had to defer some of that as part of the guideline for 2024.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you. And just my last one then is kind of from a macro perspective, and Mayor Schumer made mention of connectivity or at least services in the north. Can you talk a little bit as far as in 2024 and beyond of what efforts are being made in order to help riders that are in the North Durham that is, connect to the services that we need to get to that are typically provided in the South?
Turn that over to Service Plan. Thank you.
Through the chair, a couple of points to highlight as part of what we intend to deliver in 2024. One of those looking at the north and the primary service delivery model in many northern municipalities right now being on demand. So we are looking at, as indicated in the presentation, more than 13,000 hours of additional on-demand service, which will aid both specialized and on-demand customers traveling. A portion of those, in fact, approximately half of those hours, are specifically dedicated to supporting travel in rural and northern municipalities. So we do expect a significant improvement in capacity concerns currently being experienced in the unaccommodated rate and in many of the notes currently brought up earlier. We are also, in the spring of 2024, going to be looking at launching our first local area transit plan, which was something that came out in our Route Ahead strategy a couple of years back. That first local area transit plan, taking place in April, will be focusing on looking at routes 905 and 605 and looking at making sure that those routes best serve the communities in the north, best offer connections from on demand, best connect down to the southern municipalities. So there will be plenty of opportunity for public feedback as well as we make those decisions.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Watton.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Chris. Just given that we are expecting unprecedented growth within the region, and given that we already have capacity issues and so on and so forth, can you tell me what we have in our back pocket should we not receive funding for the Zero Emissions Transit Fund? How do we, respecting that you have to plan, and we have a 10-year strategy plan, and we have to move forward on that, what do we do when we don't get the funding? What happens then? Just if you could clarify that for me.
I'll turn that question over to General Manager.
I'll start, and then I'll also ask our Commissioner of Finance to supplement my comments. The Zero Emission Transit Fund from the federal government is very important to our 10-year plan for fleet electrification and growth of the transit network. In the absence of that, and as noted in the report, we would have to review, take stock, and sort of look at a contingency plan from there. But at this point in time, we continue to be confident in an announcement coming forward from the ZETF program that will enable us to pursue our plans. And if it doesn't come through, I'll ask Nancy if she has any comments.
So the only thing I would add to that, to Bill's comments, is in the 10-year plan, we also were relying heavily on a suggested federal program in 2026 that has not been announced yet. So again, that would have been, is hopeful to be a very significant player in delivering what we're hoping to deliver in the 10-year. If that does not materialize, again, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board on the 10-year plan and see what we can accomplish within our own fiscal realities. So.
Thank you, and sadly, that's what I was afraid you were going to say, because it looks like we're have over $300 million based on contingent on funding from another source. So, do we always just plan for that and not have things in our back pocket, so to speak?
So if I may, through the chair, from a big picture regional budget perspective, often we don't necessarily put in grant funding unless we're sure, or we put it in a project by project basis. However, because of the magnitude of transit, at the criticality of it, the criticality that hopefully will be upheld from a provincial and federal level, that we took a bit of a different tact with respect to the significance of the dollars. And those dollars are so significant, to off the cuff have a backup plan is really challenging. I mean, we would obviously look at things like debenture debt and the tax levy impact of carrying debt in order to accomplish some major capital. So we would certainly, I didn't want to leave you with the impression that, everything's gone. We would just have to really aggressively prioritize and pull in as many other sources, and that would put pressure on whether it be the transit fares or the tax levy. But we would certainly come back with a plan to do the best we absolutely could.
Thank you. And yes, I would concur, but I would also say we don't want to give the impression that all these things are going to go forward as a for sure. So that's the reason for my question. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Maybe they'll get rid of the carbon tax. That would help. Chair Henry?
Thank you. My questions are more towards the budget, but if you want to give me the latitude, I can speak now and then to the budget later.
How about we just bring the report forward now? Just do that.
If you would like that.
I need a motion to bring reports 1 through 3 forward. A mover? Commissioner Garrett and Commissioner Watton, all in favor? Okay. So did you want to go ahead and speak to
Thank you.
the budget?
I would like to speak to the budget, and I'd like to answer Councillor Brenner's question. What would fix our budget? A rethink of Bill 23. And you're absolutely right. $900 million of costs to the region of Durham over 10 years, Bill 23. And I'm always challenged, so a little attitude, because when I speak out against and I worry often when I speak out against the other levels of government that sometimes repercussions happen, and I don't mean for that to happen. But the question you just raised is elimination of the gas tax. Within this budget, have we incorporated the 5%, 5-cent increase for diesel fuel that becomes into effect on April 1st? So I'm getting a nod, so follow the rant. So that's 5 cents is on top of the 17 cents, which means we're now paying 22 cents a liter for diesel fuel for public transportation. It's kind of ironic that you're going to charge, wanting to get people out of their vehicles and into transit, public transit, when you put a surtax on diesel fuel that's used for public transit. I also struggle with the fact that it affects all modes of public transit. And we're not the only municipality that's going through this. Every municipality in Canada is punished by the increase. But we also get money from the gas tax. So when you stand up and you speak against it, it sometimes creates challenges. Mr. Holmes, within our budget, when you go to page 39 of 72, the largest increase that I can ever remember in staff complement is this year.
Through the chair, that's correct. It's a combination of admin, but the majority of the 794. I believe there's 88 members of Unifor that are joining the team over the course of the year, as well as the remaining administrative staff, which we require.
But the challenge that we have is that growth is constant in Durham Region, is the fastest growing region. So meeting the needs that we need to meet 10 years from now are very different than the needs today. So we need to continue to adjust transit to meet our needs. I struggle when I mentioned the gas tax earlier, that's about the cost of the difference of what we're trying to do within this budget. Totally out of our control. I had sent an email to our treasurer a minute ago to talk about the impacts of Bill 23 on transit. We know what it is on the entire budget, but I'm wondering if Ms. Taylor could comment on that.
So through the chair, for our projections today, carved out by transit, we're looking at about a $33 million impact over the 10 years. But as I mentioned earlier, that could be worse if we update our DC background study. And if we don't update our DC background study, we're not building in the significant incremental capital costs that we need. So it's only going to go up from there. So 33 million, and it'll only go up from there unless something happens with Bill 23.
So my rant, I guess. So the direct increased costs that are affecting the region of Durham and also affecting this year's transit or this year's tax rate are factors that are completely out of the control of municipal government, and in fact, it's just another form of downloading.
Through the chair, that's a fair enough overall comment.
And, you know, to our team here and to our finance team for putting all this together, I know how hard you've worked on these items that are here today. And I appreciate the work that has gone into the budget to get us to where we are today. But it is frustrating that our residents within our region, due to issues that have nothing to do with this level of government, nothing. In fact, within our level of government, we're improving services. We're doing more than we've ever before. But our funding envelopes are changing and in some ways are unpredictable. So how do we manage the unpredictability of transit? And I'll use the quote from the province, 1.5 million more homes in the province. And then you take in the factor of Durham Region will meet or hopes to meet its expectation of the number of new homes. And with plans like North Whitby, the Kedron Part 2 plan, the development that is going on in North Pickering, development that is going on in all 8 of our municipalities, all the way up to Brock, because there's new development there. How do we pull out a crystal ball to forecast our needs and then have no way to forecast what our change in operating budgets will be when the other 2 levels of government make a decision that affect us without consulting us?
Through the chair, if I may make that a bit worse, the provincial gas tax that you were just referring to, that in theory, would be incrementally larger, we have no commitment that that's going to flow through to us. So when COVID hit, they stopped committing and they topped up, and we have no commitment. So we're including it under the assumption that it has continued, but we do not actually have a commitment of that taking place.
So I'm hoping that the people that are online today and the people that are in the room today take the opportunity to reach out to the MPs and the MPPs within this region, but ideally I know their associations are connected across the province, to really raise the issues of what's affecting municipal budgets. Delivering a budget that we're delivering this year breaks my heart, because it goes against what we're trying to do, yet we're stuck in such a position that we have no other choice. And I'm happy that we're able to do more, but it's not enough. But if we didn't have the challenges of Bill 23, Ms. Taylor, could we deliver more at better value to our residents?
Yes.
Okay, that's my rant for the day. I apologize, Madam Chair. I'm just frustrated.
So at what point do we write a letter to the government?
Oh, you know what, Madam Chair, if you allow me, I have written everybody from the Prime Minister to the leaders of the opposition to talk about the challenges we're having. You know, when you deal with the issues of, and council knows this, and I'm using transit for the other challenges we're having, but, you know, the burden put onto us to manage homelessness, mental health, and addictions, the shortfall of funding related to that file. Then you have the shortage of funding related to our police department, who manage people who should be in jail, that are released back into the community under supervised orders, and we've got that problem. And then we've got the mandatory obligations that we have as elected officials to make sure that our drinking water is absolutely safe, and it should be. But if
And
you
don't
look
forget
into-
asylum seekers.
And don't forget, you've got asylum seekers and refugees. I think, you know, I'm going to say to our CEO, 350 asylum seekers in Durham Region tonight? Yeah, 350 that we pay the bill for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to do housekeeping. So 7.1, we didn't actually approve that. I don't know if there's any questions on that. We jumped right into budget. Is there any questions on 7.1? If not, can I get a motion to approve or receive? Thank you, Commissioner Watton, and all in favor? Yeah, okay, good. We seconded all of them, so it was Commissioner Garrett and Commissioner Watton. So they first and second 1 through 3, and then it was just an all in favor. Okay, so that's done. So now I have Commissioner Brenner.
This is on budget, the item that's before us. Just want to clarify. I want to thank staff. I know that they've worked hard on this. I looked at the 2024 strategic highlights. I'm very pleased to see some of the improvements that we're looking at, and they're going in the right direction. So I want to start off by saying that. But I also need to say I don't disagree with the regional chair in terms of the impact of the province of Ontario and the federal government. But unfortunately, while we're struggling to keep the taxes down because of the neglect by the provincial government and what they've done to us in Bill 23, unfortunately, as we have heard over and over again, whether it's the students from post-secondary or from the many, many communications that have been forwarded, we have people losing their jobs. We have people that are losing their jobs because they can't get to work. We have people that are quitting their jobs because they can't get to work. We have students that need to have increased time to get to school, which means it cuts into increased time to get home from school, meaning they too can't go to jobs. My concern is that, and I know that we haven't dealt with the correspondence, that we'll go back to that, but my concerns are that we as transit have a duty to accommodate. We have a duty to accommodate up to undue hardship. I can assure you, the size of Durham Region, and I know it's a challenge, and I don't disagree with our regional chair, but I can assure you that the threshold to achieve a duty to accommodate on the basis of undue hardship is pretty slim by a regional municipality our size. So what I am saying is that I like the report, but I can't support it. I can't support it because we are leaving people behind that need and rely on transit services. I know and I'm very aware of what the impact might be in terms of achieving what we need to do. But what's before us, and I know when we get to the region, we get a chance to debate it again. I'll do it there, but what's before us, like I said, I commend staff on their creativity on 5.3, and I thank them for that. But unfortunately, from what I'm hearing, from what I'm reading, I believe that there's an appetite by many, many in the public to, if it means a different increase in our taxation, we may have to look at that to achieve the real needs of all persons that rely on our service. And it may not be a majority as it relates to filling the 920 bus that get out of the region. It may very well be a minority of people that need to get within the region to their jobs. And I remind all of us That is our role, not just to get the people out of the region to work in Toronto and other parts of the GTA, but to get them within the region to work within our region. And I don't think this goes far enough to achieve that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Roy?
Thank you very much. And through you, Madam Chair, I'm going to start just with a question and to the CAO. You alluded to it just in the context and when the question was asked about the positions and future positions and additional positions. Overall, the practice, and we just completed our budget over at the town of Whitby. Overall, when the review is done for which positions move forward and which positions are the ones that are held back, how are the classifications and how is that categorized or evaluated as to what was the moving forward with? You know what I understand? Is there scoring with it? Was there scoring in terms of what this looked like through the whole process?
I was going to talk for the region. I'm not sure if that was your question or specific to transit.
Is it the same practice? Would it be the same practice as we work
Well, I
through?
can tell you from the region's perspective, we really look at council priorities. And with this year's budget, our priorities were very much focused on front-facing services, transit and works being top priority given the infrastructure requirements behind the housing targets and the recognition that we have a 10-year plan for transit and we are desperately trying to stay on track with it. Within the commission, I'll ask the general manager to comment.
Yeah.
Thank you. Through the chair, there's a couple of items that I'll touch on. First is the service plan, and that's just the number of staff we need to deliver the plan. Also in there was the transition plan, so that was the transition of the service in. Then there were the 17 additional positions that we identified. And as Chris alluded to before, we had other thoughts that we had to mitigate. And what we presented are those positions which we truly need to be able to deliver the existing service. And I can provide you with a couple of examples of that. 4 of the positions which we've put forward, people have been in those roles for 3 to 4 years now doing that work. Because it needs to be done. If it's not there, it has impacts to what we can produce, whether it's on the technical side, in terms of systems on the bus, training side. One is a training person. It reduces our capacity, which reduces the number of people we can produce as bus operators, which reduces the service we can put out. Then there's others that we need to right-size the business, and there's two mechanics in there that we're short 2 mechanics right now to be able to meet the appropriate ratio we need to continue to maintain the fleet as it's evolving. There's also 2 maintenance supervisors in there, for example, that we require to ensure that we have 24/7 coverage and support for our employees from a safety and security perspective. So what you see in here, the minimum number we need to address current requirements that we have to continue to operate the business. Anything over and above that in terms of meeting not only the existing service, but what we have planned for 24, we have deferred those.
Okay, and further, can you qualify current status? Because I heard in the presentation, within 6 months, we went from 98% to 110% ridership. So the original, when you spoke and we were speaking about the ridership and we were at 98% of pre-COVID, and now we're at 110% the date and time. So current actually in 6 months' time, which is within our current budget, will not be current, correct?
Correct. So our service plan this year is projecting, and you'll see in the budget where we're based on our ridership increases through the fall. So as we indicated last year, annually it was 98% of 2019 pre-pandemic. During the fall, we were seeing monthly 10% over pre-pandemic levels. We're projecting significant rider increases based on the trends that we're seeing in ridership. And that's what the service plan is intended to address. By the time we get the services in September, we'll continue to see those month-over-month increases, so we'll have the additional services to accommodate that growth.
Okay, and this just stems just from not only our conversations of what has taken place from the town of Whitby, but the continued conversation that's taking place with the Ontario Big City mayors and hearing everybody's frustration at this point in time as we're going through all of our budgets in all different areas. And it is the demand of where we're trying to keep up to the status of what is current, but is also growth, because growth is happening faster than we're able to keep up with. And I know that as we're looking at this as Bill 23, which many municipalities have not achieved their current year numbers. So that's impacting us. That's impacting us a lot. And as we're talking, and I just did prep this morning for Health and Social Services for our budget, and the aspect of the impact of Bill 23 into our budget. And I know currently Toronto, they just illustrated what the impact was outside of the budget of what impact of federal budget, provincial budget, and what our current tax rate would be. We would see quite a substantial difference if we were actually funded to what we need to be funded to the current status. But I'm looking at plans across and to our first presenter, and I don't know if she's still here, but when we're taking a look at density and the amount of impact that we're looking along our major corridors where transit should be in place. We're also looking at density changes, and we're getting requests of density changes from 6 stories to 25 stories on a corridor that's supposed to give transit. And it's frustrating because we're not getting the funds to support the infrastructure we need to have in place. It's from schools, the debate about schools, it's the debate about healthcare and hospitals, it's the debate about transit. And I have not this year taken the transit as yet, but my daughter's returning from school, so I will probably lose my vehicle, so I will be on transit again. But it is, I grew up taking transit, and my daughter goes to school in Halifax and takes transit. And like, it's easy to take transit everywhere. And it's frustrating where if we had like a pot of gold right now, where would we distribute that to? And how could we distribute that amongst all the areas that we need to have this? We're not having we are having some good relationships with some levels of government and getting some funding, but it's critical that all levels of government are sitting around the table, and the expectation is upon us to be doing what we need to do. Well, behind the words, there needs to be the action, and there's no action. And I find it very frustrating for ourselves as at the lower level, that's what we're considered, that we are not getting the funding and the support that we need to do to provide the services to get a person from A to B. And that education needs to be put out there as well too, but unfortunately, the education is very limited in how we can get that out to who needs to hear it. And a lot of them are not listening either. It's frustrating, very frustrating. And for once, I've used my 5 minutes. But
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be brief. I believe Councillor Brenner had articulated my thoughts as well. So I am not, with no disrespect to staff, I cannot support this budget, this report. Because for me, transit is a priority, especially in Clarington, which I have seen, you might not call them cuts, but cuts to transit, and I get the brunt of it from my residents every single day. So as it stands, I can't support this report. And can I have, when the time comes, recorded vote, please?
Okay, Commissioner Watton.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to our CAO or to our treasurer. What does it look like if this budget is not supported at this level?
I would say council has one of two choices, possibly three choices. Identify a parallel cut elsewhere in the organization that would enable us to maintain the 5%, or accept a tax increase for municipal services. I'm ignoring DRPS requirements over the 5% that is the target that was given.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. So at this point, I've had a request for a recorded vote from Commissioner Anderson on 7.2, the budget. So it passes at this level. I'm sure there's going to be more conversations in the near future. I'm going just to jump, if I oh no, we've actually moved and seconded for 7.3. You want, yeah, it's already been moved and seconded. Is there any questions to 7.3? All in favor? Thank you. And then we'll go back to correspondence, 6.1. I've made a mess of the agenda. Pardon? You move to receive? Seconded by Councillor and Commissioner Anderson. Did you want to speak to it? Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm speaking to this item because it may be a resolution that talks about Pickering. And I've already commented on the duty to accommodate, so I'm not going to repeat it under the Human Rights Code. But what I do want to say is that this is not just about the city of Pickering. I can assure you, and I've seen the communication, whether you're the city of Oshawa, your Accessibility Advisory Committee has taken note of it and are discussing and looking at it. I've seen communication from the town of Whitby, where their Accessibility Advisory Committee has taken note of it and will be discussing it. I won't speak for Ajax. I haven't seen anything, so I don't want to second guess. But I can assure all municipalities, and I'm not sure what's happening in the north, but I can definitely say that along the horseshoe or the lakeshore area, that the Accessibility Advisory Committees, I can safely say, are concerned they were not consulted and are concerned that they believe there is a breach of the Ontario Human Rights Code. And I truly believe that there is as well. And I'm not going to repeat, we've already voted on it in terms of the budget, but I just want this committee to be aware of those that are impacted on the legislatively appointed Accessibility Advisory Committee. I feel safe to say they agree with where my head's at, and they certainly agree where the head of Commissioner Anderson is at, and other members who have already, spoken out about this. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. General Manager Holmes.
Thank you. I just wanted to, a point of clarification in the correspondence to correct one of the items in it, or actually two of them. One related to the proximity standard of 95% within 800 meters. There was a suggestion that was new in January, but it's not new. It's been in place since September of 21 when Tech approved the Route Ahead strategy. It was part of that, so it's not a new strategy. The second was in relation to the next stop announcement system, where there was comments made that we've been pushing back or it's not appropriate. And I just want to make the comment that it does provide pre-boarding announcements as well as onboard verbal and auditory announcements. That is required by Section 51 and 52 of the Integrated Standards Act of the ODA. Yes, the system, it is a basic system, but it does meet those requirements. The volume gets adjusted based on ambient noise, and as with any mechanical device, at times there are failures, which we do repair. But I just want to make that clarification because there was an inference that that wasn't there.
Just to be clear, I do understand what the general manager is saying, but there's also the duty to consult, and that never happened at the levels that it should have happened, which in itself is a breach of the Ontario Human Rights Code by not consulting with the accessibility advisory committees from each of the lower tier municipalities. I don't know if there was consultation with the regional one, but I can definitely say there was none with any of the accessibility advisory committees throughout the lower tier municipalities, and that, I believe, should have happened. And it may not have changed anything, by the way, but I don't know that, and we don't know that. But I think it certainly would have been important to include them. And I think going forward, hopefully it's a lesson learned and something we can consider.
Okay, thank you. I need, so we have a motion to receive. Is there any other questions on this correspondence? All in favor? Thank you. All right. So we have nothing under 9, nothing under 8 or 9. Any other business? Seeing none. Our next meeting is April the 3rd, so I'm sure we'll be all together again very soon at Finance with some good conversations. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Watt and Commissioner Roy, all in favor? Thank you.